Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Elevenses. This is the second one in a series of travel presentations we are doing, and this one is covering specifically seasonal peaks around travel and the search trends we have seen around seasonal peaks. First off, a quick introduction for those of you that have not seen me before. My name is Matt Lloyd. I am a strategic comms planner working at Google, clearly. And as I said, I am here today to give you some more detail about the travel industry and some of the search trends that we see around peaks. Now, as we know, the travel industry is largely focused around a succession of peak activity. There are the big peaks, i.e. post-Christmas into January blues, and then there are the more tactical peak opportunities that exist around stuff like bank holidays, sporting events, or the late getaway peaks which kind of exists mid to end of summer. Now, the timing of the peaks don't change because we know they are triggered by specific events. However, potentially the way you should be thinking about how you deploy your paid media is changing across these periods, because what we do see is the way people are consuming media, the way people are researching and booking their holidays is always changing. We know that the industry continues to change, we know that people's media behaviour continues to change, and we know that has a knock-on effect with the way that people research and book their holidays. So what we wanted to look at is what we kind of see coming through in terms of the different search trends and what we have seen kind of historically and what we might see going forward. And what we have pulled out here is three kind of specific categories, really, of different trends. So just looking specifically around query behavior, looking at different potential destination trends, and then a final one as well, looking around specific travel trends. So stuff that we've seen going on in 2018 and previously, but we feel could have a real sort of knock-on effect going forward. So the first one we wanted to look at is querying behavior. And this is basically just looking at people's querying behavior in general. So how do the queries that people make around holidays change during the peak period? And the way we have set up this entire presentation, just so you know the navigation of it, is basically, I will give the slide in a minute, which is kind of the different trends that we have sort of seen and what we believe the implications, if I could say the word, for those trends are. And then just a few slides kind of diving into a bit of the data around those trends and why we've kind of pulled them out. So that's the kind of format that I will go through for the rest of the presentation. So querying behavior, what are the trends, what are the implications, and what is the data? So when it comes to querying behavior, there are three trends that we see. So unsurprisingly, during the peaks period, holidays and getting away is front of mind. But actually, people are still very much looking for inspiration. So both people are kind of still are thinking about logistics and about booking, they are still looking and thinking about inspiration. So as a result, we see during peaks that actually non-destination searches make up a larger share of holiday queries as people search for holidays. So keywords such as cheap holidays, all-inclusive holidays, or just even holidays make up a large proportion of the keywords than very specific kind of keyword searches. We also see that people are searching for specific brands and searching on specific brand terms. And our thinking behind this is that actually people are using the brand terms to attach itself to either the most convenient kind of packages that are out there, or the best deals that they can find that are out there. And then the third thing, and this is a trend we will all be aware of, but we continue to see, is that we see a spike of activity of people searching on mobile devices. And we see that as an ongoing trend anyway, as more and more of our media behavior kind of transitions onto mobile devices. But we do see a sort of slightly pronounced peak of mobile activity running through December and January. And the insight really behind this is that when you think about kind of thinking about booking your holidays, as soon as kind of Christmas is over and people are back to work, you will kind of do anything you can to be thinking about, right, how can I get some sort of inspiration and start booking my holiday. So any kind of snatch moment, you can do that, and mobiles are a perfect device for kind of finding 5 or 10 minutes to quickly research something which will take you away from the drudgery of a January, basically. So what are the recommendations we would make around this? So firstly, make sure you are present on all the queries and ensure that your ad copy and creative helps you stand out from the competition. So just make sure that you have expanded your keyword list to incorporate all of the keywords that you should be in terms of your peak period. Also, and this is less of a search recommendation, but anyone who saw the presentation I gave 3 weeks ago about brand consideration, is make sure that any of your kind of brand building activity has been aligned as closely as you can to peaks activity, because clearly what we are seeing is brand searches are really top of mind during peak. So make sure that your brand is top of mind for people to be searching on. And then finally, ensure your mobile strategy is optimized to take advantage of the opportunity. So as we are seeing, mobile is playing a much bigger role in the way that people are researching, and we are starting to see some evidence of the way that people are booking their holidays as well. So make sure that your mobile campaign is set up, you're attributing it correctly, and that you're measuring it correctly in terms of the attribution you are giving to the different impact that mobile search is having throughout the journey. So if we look at that data in a little bit more detail, firstly, when we were looking at the different kind of searches, what we were seeing is non-brand holiday queries over the last 3 years. So city level queries have dropped on average 2.2 points during the peak period, while no destination queries have increased 1.4 periods during the same period as a share of total queries. Country level and region level queries have increased only slightly during peak periods, so plus 0.3 and plus 0.3 points as a share of total. And for holiday queries, pure generics replace city-specific queries during the peak period, suggesting that travellers are open to inspiration and are looking for eye-catching destinations or good deals. As I was saying, when we look at mobile, what you can clearly see from this slide is we have just looked at share of travel queries across a period from 2016 across to 2018, but then we have also pulled out specifically what goes on during the peak periods. And as we can see, mobile queries continue to steadily take a share from desktop. So this is a trend that continues over the last few years. And what you can see with those spikes during the peaks period is this is especially pronounced, this trend during peaks. So this, from our point of view, is an ongoing trend as we see people's media consumption, certainly their kind of research behaviour, migrate away from desktop devices towards mobile devices. And this is something we see continue to happen across many sectors, yourself included. And it means clearly everyone has to think about how they are setting up and thinking about having a correct mobile optimized strategy in terms of making sure you are delivering and attributing value correctly to your mobile activity across this period. And then the next one we wanted to talk about was specifically to talk about destination trends that we have seen and what destination trends we have seen going on in the market. Now, broadly, when it comes to destination trends, I'd say what we've seen is there is the impact of the broader political and economic challenges, so that we see going on in the world and how that clearly impacts people's travel decisions. But then also we continue to see the trends that you'd expect to see during peak continue to grow. So in terms of the political challenges that we see going on, our estimate is the Eastern Med will continue to be strong in 2019, though we'd expect larger gains in some of the more fringe destinations like Tunisia and Egypt. And certainly what we are starting to see from our query data is that it looks like Turkey, in terms of the amount of queries that we are seeing coming through, the level of queries have recovered to a level that we kind of saw pre-2014, 2015. So Turkey sort of seems to have recovered, whereas actually we see areas like Egypt and Tunisia are recovering slower. So there may be more growth to come from those two destinations. When it comes to thinking about flights, unsurprisingly, we still see that long-haul queries account and get their biggest kind of peak of activity during the peaks period. So 20% of all kind of flight queries during that time are around long-haul, and that is kind of the biggest share we see for long-haul. In the July peaks, you see around 15%, but during the kind of December, Jan peaks, we see around 20%. So clearly, people, when at the start of the year, are very much in the mindset of like, if I am going to plan a long haul trip, I'll be planning it at the start of the year, and that really is the time to kind of make the most of that queries. And then, unsurprisingly, perhaps we see a similar trend for beach searches during peaks. They remain basically the bread and butter of peaks activity. So our recommendations really in this area is, one, be prepared kind of for the continued growth that we think will come in the Eastern Med, particularly as we see the queries potentially bounce back for Egypt and Tunisia, but especially if Turkey does hit capacity in terms of booking. Make sure you are capturing demand and highlight any low-cost options in ad headlines for any key long-haul opportunities and destinations. And then finally, optimize as much as possible on the core destinations with high keyword coverage, good hygiene index score, and an appropriate bid and budget strategy. So for slide 8, if we look at the non-branded, so we wanted to look at non-branded search queries for Turkey. And as you can see from here, the recovery in queries have gone back to kind of 2014 levels. So we're kind of mapping all of the different events that have been going on in Turkey. And as you can kind of see from the query line, there has been strong query recovery in 2018. And as I was saying on the previous slide, and if we go on to the next slide, what we have then looked at is wanting to index non-branded searches for Egypt, Tunisia, and Turkey, and use 2014 as a kind of benchmark. So benchmark all of those against 2014, and to see what was kind of going on in the markets, and to see what was going on in the keywords searches. And what we have kind of seen is actually, once you get into 2016, 2017, Egypt and Tunisia are still a long way off, certainly into 2018, where they were in 2014. Whereas actually Turkey has made a very steady recovery and is looking to get back to 2014 levels. So our kind of prediction would be that we may see return to query growth going across basically for searches for Egypt and Tunisia going into 2019. And then if we look at how consumers are thinking about using and booking long-haul travel, this is again looking at just a share of all flight queries and then pulling out long-haul. And what we're looking at here is you can see quite pronounced peaks in the kind of December Jan peak strategy for long-haul. And this is kind of unsurprising really, because what you would expect to see is that clearly when people are thinking about their year-long holiday plans, it is likely to be in January that they're booking them, and that is when we are seeing the kind of biggest uplift in long-haul searches. And then finally, when it comes to beach destinations make up to 6% of all holidays and accommodation queries in the weeks leading up to January's peaks, but they jump up to 12% of queries during January peaks. So searches for the most popular beach destinations like the Canaries, Balearics, etc., almost all of them double every year from December to January. So as I kind of said before, beaches and beach holidays remain the bread and butter of the peak season. So make sure you have everything aligned to be taking advantage of all beach queries that are coming through. And then finally, we wanted to look at a few, see if we could identify any emerging travel trends that we see appearing. And broadly speaking, there are two trends that we see happening. Now, the first trend that we see is there is a greater demand, or there continues to be a greater demand for experience-led travel. And actually, this is resulting in two kind of individual strands of activity that we see happening. So an increase in people looking for solo travel options, so people looking to clearly have their own kind of experience. And then the second one is the increase in people looking for more adventure-based holidays. So the idea of people getting away and having a genuine experience aside from just sitting by a pool. The other trend that we see coming through, slightly counterintuitive search, but kind of makes sense, is people looking for low season peak travel options. So this is basically really anyone who's like, I really want to get away. I'm going to book my holiday at the same time as everyone else, but I really want to go somewhere where no one else is. So I'm really kind of, I just need to book a holiday, but I need to be as far away from the maddening crowd as I can. So it's basically people looking for the low season options during peak booking times, which is a kind of, which you could argue is kind of a slightly more discerning traveller who is just looking to get away, but just doesn't want to get away with the mass crowd. The recommendations we'd make around this is, one, make sure you are successfully using audience filters to highlight solo travel options and destination experiences on landing pages to capture the emerging demands around solo and more adventure-based travel queries. And also low season searches do peak during Jan. So although people want to get away from the crowds, they're still going to book at the same time as everyone else. So make sure you are covering these queries and tailor landing pages to show travel details that fit into this kind of season, this sort of mindset, which is basically low season opportunities during peak season booking. So if we look, what we can see is queries for solo travel has increased by over 15% year on year from the last peak period. And that is basically not just actually a combination of people traveling to the long haul destinations, but also people taking short haul breaks as well. So we're seeing those queries go up across a whole range of different destinations. And this is clearly a trend that is being picked up by other kind of news publications, and a kind of a quite well developed idea that people are looking increasingly for solo travel opportunities and different destinations to take them there. And then the next thing and trend we were talking about is to look at the different selected and the different adventure destinations. So we continue to see, again, if we look at queries for non-branded adventure holidays and queries from 2015 through to current day, this trend continues to grow. And there are specific and different areas that we see in locations which are coming out more than others. So increasingly, we are seeing increased activity for the likes of Colombia, New Zealand and Chile, as people are looking further afield to find their kind of adventure and their own kind of unique experience. And then finally, what we wanted to look at and what this line is looking at is this is looking at non-branded queries for UK users containing phrases related to low season in all categories, which we see continue to increase. So again, just as an overall trend across the period, people looking for low season as a trend is continuing to increase, but it spikes along with a lot of other stuff during the peak period. So we see people increasingly during peak searching for low season. And when we look at the type of typical destinations that people are looking at, low season queries are up 125% during the peak period from 2014. And then destinations like Thailand, Dubai and Italy are all appearing as very popular destinations for people looking for a low season getaway. So in terms of next steps, if there's all the stuff in here that you would like to know anything more about, please reach out to your Google rep and discuss any of the trends you have seen in here and how you might think about implementing that into your different keyword strategies, but also how you may be evolving and developing your mobile strategy to make sure you are taking advantage of all of the different trends that I have outlined here. Thank you very much for your time. Have a wonderful Christmas for those of you that are just about to finish, and I'm sure we'll see you all in the new year. Thank you very much.